C.S. Lewis, his book, That Hideous Strength, and other things that he writes, The Abolition of Man and other things, seem prophetically to be pointing toward what you're discussing in the book.
Yeah, totally. One of my favorite Lewis quotes is that human nature will be the last part of nature to fall to man, and the battle will then have been won. The question is who precisely would have won it. So Lewis is a very prophetic voice. This Hideous Strength is one of those sci-fi novels I was talking about, actually, written in the 1950s, absolutely pointing to where we are now. And The Abolition of Man is basically a non-fiction version of that book, he said himself.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, there are so many writers I could have written about.
Yeah, but the thing is, Paul, that you, what needs to be said, I think, which if someone reads That Hideous Strength, or they read your book, what we're talking about is something that is undeniably creepy, unheimlich, uncanny. I would say it smells evil. There's something about it which seems, at least as I felt it intuitively, to be at war with humanity and with God. You can sense it. And that's what I find interesting, is that there are many people who ordinarily wouldn't use that kind of vocabulary, but they themselves have a sense of it. In other words, whatever this is makes you suddenly aware of your humanity, and that there's something that, I mean, you say in your subtitle, on the unmaking of humanity. That to me, when I read Perelandra, C.S. Lewis's second in his Ransom trilogy, the unman is that. It's what happens when we begin to unravel, to be atomized, to be less than human. That seems to be the process you're getting at in this book.
I think, speaking of C.S. Lewis, I was wondering just the other day what would happen if the Screwtape Letters were written now, and what advice Screwtape would give to his nephew about using the internet. Right? Get them on phones all the time. Get them on their screens all the time. That's the best way to take them away from God. That's the best way to shatter their attention. That's the best way to get them addicted to pornography and gaming and lust and greed and all the other things that we want them addicted to. If you were the devil, you would definitely invent the internet, put it that way. I sometimes look at the internet as a giant Ouija board that kind of summons things through its nodes. But it's a really good point. And one of the things I'm trying to wrestle with in this book, I don't really know the answer to this. There's a couple of chapters on this in the book. What are the spiritual implications of digital technology especially? If you listen to the people in Silicon Valley and the language that they use, not all of them obviously, but a lot of them, they use very, very openly theological language to talk about what they're doing. And again, a lot of this is quoted in the book. These people say that when they're talking about AI, that they are building God, that they are making God. When Ray Kurzweil from Google, the great prophet of the singularity, was asked, does God exist? He said, not yet. So this is the vision that they have. Similarly, when Ezra Klein at the New York Times went and asked a load of AI developers, given that you keep warning us that this stuff is so dangerous, why are you developing it? They couldn't answer the question, but he said they felt like they had an obligation to usher this new intelligence into the world. Right? So these people are summoning something.
Yeah, they're not
using
going
the
to actually
language
say,
of summoning
I've
something.
sold my soul to the devil.
Well, that would be another way of putting it.
Because that would be very unpleasant for them to admit or to acknowledge even
But it has
themselves.
the same feeling behind it.
Sure.
You're right. There's a spiritual darkness to it, which everyone can feel. And it's one reason why people feel so discomforted, because it's not just about, oh, I'm using my phone a bit too much, I should probably put it down. There is something that feels like we're being unmade going on. And I don't think it's just being paranoid.
And that's an interesting word. I mean, to unpack that word, if we're created by God, there's something irreducible about us. In other words, to have a soul, to be made in the image of God, is to be irreducible. And it seems to me that the things that you talk about in the book are attempts to reduce us, to atomize us, to fracture us, and then to atomize us, so that we aren't a holistic thing, an integrated thing, but some kind of agglomeration of connected bits, which is different. And it seems to me it's sort of the unraveling. I don't know. I'm trying to think of an image, but that's the impression you get, that it's doing something which is at warring with the very core of what it is to be human, which I guess requires us to then try to define, what does it mean to be human? What is it that we sense is being ward upon?
Well, I think what you've got with the technological system that we have now is a kind of bait and switch. It promises to make you more fully human and actually makes you less human in a fundamental way, because it disintegrates your attention, it takes you away from nature. I mean, if you're walking around doing this all day, which most people in this city and everywhere else in the world currently are, you're not looking into the eyes of other human beings. You don't know how to speak to them. You're not sitting around a table eating with them. If you're spending 9 or 10 hours a day on your phone, which many people are, the average for children is terrifying, from the age of about 2, which is when kids get screens now, you are being taken out of basic human relationships and you're being unmade. There's a little formula I come up with in the book when I'm trying to work out how we might define a living human culture. And I talk about the 4 Ps, which are kind of like the 4 legs of a table that you could say culture was based on. They are people, place, prayer, and the past. And I would say that every real human culture around the world, whatever kind of culture it is based on those 4 legs. So you have your people, which is a sense of the community you're part of, that you have human relationships with. Then you have your place, that's the part of the natural world that you're in, that you have a relationship with, that you understand, that you maybe grow your food on. You have prayer, that's your direct relationship to God. And you have the past, which is your sense of where you come from, a tradition that you're passing on to your children. If you look at what technology does, it unmakes all of those things. Okay, so it takes you away from nature, it shoves you into your screen instead, usually in a giant megacity surrounded by other flickering screens. It certainly takes your attention away from God. I mean, the very act of prayer and contemplation in a religious tradition is impossible if you've had your head fragmented by 5 hours on a smartphone. Try bringing it back together again to focus on anything. The past is effectively unmade. We're removed from any sense that there is any continuity in human culture because everything's broken now by the machine. We're all just moving forward into the same thing. And then you have, what have I done? I've done people, place, prayer, and the past. Yes, place. So anyway, whichever ones I've done and whichever ones I haven't done, I've lost track. All of these things are unmade by the kind of...
Place is important because it's to be grounded in a place.
If you grow up in a place, say, and that place maybe is the place that your children will then live in, then you're rooted in something. So all of this thing is, what the machine is doing is ripping up all of our roots all the time, unmaking us in these basic ways and giving us instead this promise of a kind of perpetual present. Right? So we all live in this wonderful globalized system and we tell ourselves how great it is that we can talk to people on the other side of the world on Zoom and we can text this and we can see that and we keep up with everything that's going on everywhere, and it's always sold to us as connection. But it's not connection, it's disconnection, because we disconnect ourselves from the actual physical act of real things. And so it promises us a fuller version of our humanity whilst actually, I think, uprooting the things that make human life actually meaningful.
There's nothing new under the sun. I mean, when I read the book, I thought to myself, we've seen this, we don't need to go back to the Garden of Eden, but we could. But the serpent's lies, but we can just start at the French Revolution. Suddenly, there's this promise of utopia, to wipe away the past, to remake everything. So it's a utopianist scheme that is simultaneously kind of a Tower of Babel, the idea that we can make our way into the heavens on our own, that we can achieve divinity, some kind of divinity. So when you mention Kurzweil and you mention, sometimes they talk about it explicitly, sometimes they don't, but they're all aiming at the same kind of thing. But when we look at the past, we know that every time these things have been promised, they have ended in some kind of horrific bloodbath rather than the promised utopia.
Well, speaking of the Garden of Eden, the most recognizable logo related to modern technology is an apple with a bite taken out of it. That's not a coincidence. So the French Revolution and many of the revolutions, especially of the left in the 20th century, are political manifestations of this kind of ideology of flattening, like you say, utopia. You create a perfect world, everyone's equal, everything's the same, there's no injustice, it's going to be perfect. And of course it isn't perfect because it's not possible to do it because we're all made of crooked timber, and so you do end up with gulags and death camps and massacre of the peasants in the Vendée and the rest of it. And it is exactly an attempt to kind of immanentize the echelon, almost, to create this utopia on Earth. Technology is almost, I think, the next stage of that process. So the 20th century is the age of ideology, right? So you have Marxist revolutions, Bolshevik revolutions, and you have fascist and Nazi revolutions, and they're all actually attempts to create this utopia on Earth. And they all fail, and millions end up dead. Now we're doing it through technology instead. We're going to use technology to interconnect everyone, technology to replace everything and flatten it out. I've had conversations with transhumanists who very openly say, look, we need to replace the whole of nature with technology. Nature is unjust, human life is unjust, death is unjust, nobody should get sick, it's not fair. If we use technology to effectively rebuild the entire world, we can create that paradise. We can live forever. You take the Christian story, which actually is the basis of our culture, and you turn it into a technological story. We replace God. We don't have to, try and go to the kingdom of heaven after our death. We create it here. We use it with technology to do it. We upload our minds into a silicon heaven. All of this stuff is seriously discussed. So technology is the latest manifestation of that desire for a utopian paradise on Earth.
If you think these conversations are valuable, would you do us a favor and please like this video and subscribe to this channel? When you do that, you help us get these conversations out to a wider audience by telling YouTube that people are interested in this. Also, you can go to socratesinthecity.com, sign up for our newsletter, and you can check back every week. There's new stuff here every week. Thank you for tuning in.